Everyone dies at some point. And with that reality comes some cold, hard facts. You will have a last kiss, a last hug, a last phone call, and a last photograph. On Friday night, we met up at Casey's house. Even though she has an annoying neighbor, her parents built this amazing fire pit that's the perfect spot for chilly autumn nights. After starting the fire and roasting some marshmallows, she brought out something I hadn't seen in at least a decade, a disposable camera. "This is a special camera," Casey said, with a grin. "Apparently, when you take a picture, it'll be your last photo before you die." I sat there trying to digest what she was saying. "You mean the camera kills you?" "Yeah, like that one Goosebumps book," Brady replied. "Say cheese and die." "Oh my gosh, I loved that one," Maribel said, grinning. No. That's not what I mean." Casey held her hands up, clearly annoyed that we didn't get it. "Everyone has a last photo before they die. Like, for example, my grandpa. 3 days before he passed away, he went on a fishing trip. The last photo on that trip is the last photo that was ever taken of him." "Well, it's impossible for a camera to show that," I replied. "It would have to be a time-traveling camera for that to work." "You guys are no fun." Casey rolled her eyes and started putting the camera back in her bag. Wait. "We didn't say we didn't want to use it," Maribel said. "Yeah, it could be fun," I added. A wicked smile flashed on Casey's lips. "Okay, good. Who wants to be the first?" Brady raised his hand. "I'll go." That was Brady for you. Never missed a chance to impress the girls. He stood up, his face lit by the roaring fire. "Where should I stand?" "The lighting's kinda harsh. Maybe by that tree." Brady walked several feet away from the fire and stood next to the tree. Then he leaned against it, crossed his arms, and raised an eyebrow. Casey raised the camera to her face. 3, 2, 1. Cheese. Click. Our white light flashed across the dark backyard. Brady stepped away from the tree, grinning. "Okay, who's next?" Casey asked. "I'll go," Maribel said. She pushed her glasses up her nose and stood next to the tree, somewhat awkwardly. Casey lifted the camera to her face again and took a photo. Click, click. The ratcheting sound of her rewinding the film filled the air. "Okay, Benny, your turn," she said, shooting me a smile. I walked over to the tree, took off my baseball cap, and waited. Casey lifted the camera to her face, then frowned. "Can't you smile?" "Nope." Fine." Click. She rewound the film and handed the camera to me. Then she posed next to the tree in a classic sorority squat pose. Yeah, this wasn't awkward at all. Casey and I had just started dating, but the longer things went on, the more doubts I was having. Sure, we looked good in pictures, a classic football star cheerleader match. In reality, we weren't either of those things. She was pretty, but extremely insecure, jealous, and high maintenance. I was a neurodivergent math nerd who just happened to luck out genetically and look like a jock. I stared at her through the viewfinder, her form slightly distorted. Click. "Hey, you didn't count down," she whined. "What? You were posing?" "I want to know exactly when the photo is being taken. That's all." "Okay, sure." I rewound the camera and handed it back to her. She sidled up next to me and lowered her voice. "Hey, when Brady and Maribel leave, you want to stay a little bit after?" "Oh, I don't know. My dad's renovating the kitchen, and he wants me to help him in the morning. It doesn't have to be long. Just for a little while." I should have said no, but she was pushing, and I felt bad saying no. "Okay, just for a half hour." "Sounds good to me. We can watch something down in the basement. My parents can't hear a thing down there." "What about your neighbor? He seemed really mad when we were watching V for Vendetta. Said the explosions woke him up. Remember, he was pounding on the glass door and yelling at us." She rolled her eyes. "So we'll keep the volume down. Come on, it's just a half hour. We don't even have to watch anything." "Okay." Before I could say more, she grabbed the camera and started towards the fire pit. I followed. "When are you gonna get those developed?" Brady asked. "We could go tonight. There's still a 1-hour photo in the CVS on Route 14, Maribel replied. and we could pick up some snacks. Wait, seriously, they still develop photos? Casey asked. Mim, my dad uses them for like passport photos and other official stuff. So it was decided. The four of us piled into Brady's car and took off into the night. We spent the entire hour hanging out at the store, picking out snacks. Then Casey went up to the counter, grabbed the paper envelope, and led us back out to the car. We piled inside and Brady turned on the lights. She flicked open the envelope and pulled out the photos. No fucking way. The first photo showed an older man standing on a beach, gray hair dripping wet, blue waves rolling behind him. But with his square jaw and tall build, he looked just like an aged-up Brady. That's impossible, I said. Not necessarily, Maribel replied. After a pause, the camera looked like a disposable camera, but it's possible someone put a cheap microchip in there, like a mini Raspberry Pi or something. Then it took our photos, and with the help of AI, aged them up. Yeah, but how would the CVS develop them? I asked. Maybe it was straightforward. Maybe when he opened the camera to get the film, there was a USB stick there instead, loaded up with the images. So he just stuck it in the computer and printed them out. It's weird, but Amazon is full of weird shit like this. I once saw a karaoke machine that used AI to attune everyone as they were singing in real time. We could go back inside and ask them, I suggested. I want to see the rest of the photos first, Casey said, nearly cutting me off. Where'd you get this camera again? Maribel asked. A friend gave it to me. And with that vague response, she flipped to the next photo. It was a family Christmas photo. Several people standing in front of the tree, happy faces lit by multicolored lights. But my heart dropped when I saw the woman on the left. A woman, maybe 30, holding a little baby, with the same heart-shaped face, the same curly dark hair as Maribel. Oh no, she said, her eyes wide. We all stared at the photo, silently, unsure what to say. But then I saw it. In the middle of the photo, sitting on the couch, was an old woman. A very old woman, with skin so wrinkled it looked like crepe paper, and hair so white it looked like a tuft of cotton candy on her head. Wire-framed glasses were perched on her nose. I think that's you. Maribel snatched the photo out of Casey's hands. Whoa, she whispered, studying it up close. For all her big talk about this being some AI thing, she seemed to take it pretty seriously. As I watched Maribel, I couldn't help but smile. For a second, I felt something, a sense of awe as I looked at her face, lighting up with the joy of her family. I'd never looked at Maribel as anything other than a friend, but there was something tugging at my heartstrings now. Not even something I could put into words as a crush or attraction or lust, just something, a flicker of connection, of emotion, of Benny. I glanced at Casey, and then I looked down. In her hands was the photo she'd taken of me, the exact same photo of me tonight holding my baseball cap, standing next to the tree, not smiling, staring straight ahead, eyes red from the flash. My first thought was the camera had malfunctioned. Whatever this was, AI or otherwise, had messed up and glitched on my picture, and it just spit out the photo as it was taken tonight. But as Casey, Brady, and Maribel stared at me with horror, I realized, so it's saying, the picture you took of me tonight is the last picture of me alive. I guess so, Casey said. The silence pressed in. I shook my head and forced a laugh. Come on, this is just some stupid prank camera. Like Maribel said, it's some AI thing. Maybe it even purposely skips some people to scare them. None of them were laughing. Okay, come on. Let's look at Casey's. I plucked my photo from the stack and froze. Casey was sitting on the floor of someone's basement. Her hands were tied to a metal support pole with thick rope. A strip of duct tape had been placed over her mouth. The left side of her head was matted with blood, and a thin trail dripped down the side of her face. Her blue eyes were wide with fear, and looking straight at whoever was taking the photo. This is some sick fucking prank, Brady muttered, his voice low with anger. Casey just sat there frozen. Let's go home, Marble said. Forget about all this stuff. It's just a prank, like Brady said. But Casey didn't move. She just sat there, the photo shaking in her hands, her blue eyes wide with fear. What's wrong, Marble asked. Softly. The basement, she said, finally pointing at the photo. I recognize it. My dad and I went over there one time when he needed help with the fuse box, and I thought he was annoying, but I never. Casey, whose basement is it? I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. My neighbor's. Where are you going? Brady was unbuckling his seatbelt. Obviously, the guy in there did something to the photos. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. He started to swing the door open. Wait, Casey shouted. Shouted. What? What if he's out there? Who? Brady asked. Craig, my neighbor. Why would he be at the CVS? I don't know, but it's only 3 miles from his house, so he could be here. Wait, guys, this doesn't make sense. How would the photo guy know we thought the camera took our last photos before we died? Maribel asked, placing her own photo in the cup holder. Because we were talking about it, I replied. At least Casey and I were. We were trying to be quiet, but it's possible he heard us. A heavy silence fell over us. Okay, let's go, Maribel said, opening her door. The night was unusually dark. The sliver of a moon hung in the black sky, far above the street lamps of the parking lot. We made our way towards the sliding doors, glowing warm yellow. Brady was probably right. The photo guy certainly had the time. We were in the store for a full hour. Waiting for the photoful, he could have easily hopped on some AI tool like Midjourney and typed in things like old man standing on the beach or Christmas family photo of old woman. Although it would take some photoshopping skills to get our actual faces in the images, but if he had access to the real photos we took, that was possible. Nobody recognized the photo guy, right? I whispered right before we stepped inside. No, Brady replied. Maribel and Casey shook heads. I hadn't recognized him either, but he looked like he was only a few years older than us. It was possible he knew one of us. Maybe he even had some sort of revenge plot. Maybe his brother had a crush on Casey. Or maybe Maribel got picked for the trivia team over his little sister. Just because we didn't know him didn't mean he didn't know us. 6 degrees of separation. Much less than that in a small town like ours. We stepped into the CVS. There was an old woman at the cash register, but no one at the photo booth. Hey, where'd he go? The photo guy. Brady called out to her, somewhat aggressively. He's in the back, I think she replied, eyeing him warily. We wandered through the aisles. He's hiding, Brady whispered to us. He knows what he did, and he's hiding out. We followed him down the aisle, the fluorescent lights blinking above us. The more empty aisles we passed, the more convinced I became of this theory. He'd messed with the photos and slipped out before we could confront him about it. Except that left all sorts of questions like, how did he know what Casey's neighbor's basement looked like? Wouldn't an AI tool refuse to generate such a disturbing image of a woman tied up in a basement? We turned the corner and there he was, the photo guy, restocking in the cold medicine aisle. And then it happened. Brady went batshit on him. Hey, that wasn't fucking funny, what you did to the photos. Photo guy whipped around. His eyes widened and he held up his hands. Whoa, he said, taking a step back. What are you? Stop, Casey said, stepping in front of Brady. Then she turned to photo guy. Did you do something to the photos? Her tone had an edge to it I'd never heard in it before, fear and anger slicing through her usual bubbly, chatty tone. And then, to my shock, photo guy nodded. All of us froze. For a second, time seemed to stop. Then Brady started up again. You're a sicko. That was a horrible thing to do, photoshopping Casey, making it look like she was tied up in a basement. Wait, what? Photo guy asked, his eyes widening. Oh, don't deny it, Casey spat. Brady's right. What you did was sick. You're a fucking psycho. No, I did not do that, he shook his head wildly. Look, all I was saying is that I messed up your photo job, okay? Earlier today, I spilled some Coke on the machine, and when your photos came out, they were all warped and weird and stuff. That happens if water gets inside the machine. And I already threw out the negatives so I couldn't reprint them. That's all." He held up his hands in surrender. "So you didn't edit a photo to show Casey," I said, gesturing to her, tied up in a basement. His expression told me the answer. "No." "Wait, all the photos were messed up?" I asked. "Yeah, I think so." "We didn't get any photos that were messed up, right?" I turned to Casey. She shook her head. Photo guy shrugged. "I don't know, guys, I'm just telling you what happened." "Was there anything wrong with the camera? Like a Raspberry Pi inside it or anything?" Maribel asked. "A Raspberry Pi," his face scrunched up as he glanced between us. "Like a microchip, a computer, anything." He shook his head. "It looked just like a normal disposable camera to me, although I haven't seen one of those in years." An awkward silence fell on the five of us. "Thanks, sorry for bothering you," Maribel said finally, starting back down the aisle. The three of us followed her towards the front of the store. We got back to the car without a word. Brady and Maribel in the front, Casey and I in the back. I stared at the dark parking lot ahead, my heart pounding in my ears. Maribel fidgeted with her photo in the cup holder. Brady dug in his pocket for the keys. Casey kept her back to me, staring out her window. The car rumbled to life underneath us. "Where are we going?" I asked. "My house," Brady replied. "My mom won't care. You and Casey can take the spare room and Maribel can be on the pull-out sofa." I glanced at Casey. She didn't turn around. "Fine with me," Maribel replied. Brady started pulling out of the parking space. "Wait," Casey said, suddenly. The three of us turned to her. "We should take a photo of Benny. Then that isn't his last photo alive, and the camera is wrong." Brady let out a laugh. "You're saying you actually believe this shit?" She scrunched her face at him. "Come on, let's just do it, okay?" "Fine with me," I replied. Casey turned to me, holding her phone up. I stared at the black camera glinting in the light, staring at me. She raised her hand, her fingers shaking over the screen. "Okay, 3, 2, 1. Click." The fake shutter sound filled the car, but as she stared at the phone screen, her eyes widened. "Wait," what she whispered. My heart dropped. The camera app just quit out. "Hang on." She tapped at the screen. Click. Her eyebrows furrowed. It quit out again. "Let me try." Maribel pulled out her phone and pointed it at me. Click. Her smile dropped. She glanced at her phone, then back at me. "Mine just did the same thing," she said. "It just quit out as soon as I took the picture." "That's 'cause both of you have crappy iPhone 10s or whatever," Brady said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, one of the sleek, new Motorola phones that folded up. He lifted it and pointed it at me. The bright white of a flash filled the car. As my eyes readjusted to the darkness, I saw Brady's face. His eyes were wide as he stared at the screen. "No, that doesn't even make sense," he muttered to himself, tapping at the screen. "What?" I asked. He slowly turned the phone around so I could see. All the blood drained out of my face. The photo simply showed the empty backseat of the car. Where I should have been sitting, it was just empty. "What does that mean?" "I'm like a ghost," I said, with a forced laugh. But inside, my heart was pounding like a jackrabbit's, thrumming inside my ears. "Let's get out of here." Brady threw the car in reverse. He backed out of the parking space and sped towards the exit. We flew down the main road through town, passing the little shops lined up, the tea place, the bagel shop. In the darkness, I felt a hand curl around mine. I tore my eyes away from the window and found Casey staring at me. Her hand was tight around mine. Ice cold. Guilt stabbed through me. I slowly pulled my hand away. "What?" I couldn't break up with her here in the car, right now, could I? I shoved my hands in my pockets. "Sorry. My hands are really cold. I'll warm them up." "No, your hands are cold too. Colder than mine, actually." Maribel turned around. "What's up?" Casey glared at me. Then she turned to Maribel. "Nothing," she muttered. Then she crossed her arms and stared out the window, not even glancing in my direction for the entire rest of the drive. 10 minutes later, we were pulling into Brady's driveway. He shut off the car and the inside lights came on. I squinted in the sudden brightness. Casey was motionless, like a statue, still sulking and staring out the window. Maribel's voice broke the silence. Oh my God. She'd grabbed her photo out of the cup holder and was holding it close to her face. It fluttered and shook in her hands. My heart plummeted. Without a word, she turned it around for all of us to see. It took me a minute to notice the change, because the photo looked the same, an ancient old lady sitting in front of a Christmas tree, surrounded by family. But now, the woman who had been holding the baby, she was different. In the previous photo, she'd been holding a little girl in an elaborate infant Christmas dress. Now, she was holding a little boy, dressed in a teeny little suit. It changed, she whispered. Mine changed too, Brady said, but not by much. It's just me a little older. Casey scrambled for her photo and I heard her sigh of relief almost instantly. She held it out to me, shoving it in my face before I could even look at mine. We did it, she said, her voice wavering. Look. Her photo no longer showed her tied up in a basement. Instead, it was a woman with wild gray hair in her 60s, posing next to a shaggy black dog. Relief flooded me. But that relief evaporated as soon as I looked at my photo again. It wasn't the same photo of me posing against the tree. It was a different photo, a wedding photo. I was dressed in a tux, beaming with joy, grinning ear to ear, hair slicked back and body crisp black against my neck, hand in hand with a beautiful bride. A bride I recognized. It was Maribel. I tried to hide it, but it was too late. Casey's eyes widened. Brady and Maribel leaned into the back seat, curious. Maribel's mouth fell open. Brady stared in shock. The photo swam before me as I felt weak, as darkness crept into the edges of my vision. We pulled up to a 70s split level bordered by tall hedges. Brady drove into the garage, and as soon as we came to a stop, Casey stormed out of the car. Casey, wait, I called out, following after her. I don't want to talk to you, Casey snapped back. I'd never seen this side of Casey. Sure, I'd seen her angry, but not like this. Her usually excited, chipper tone had been replaced by a low and hollow voice. Her blue eyes flashed with anger. Brady brushed past her and opened the door into the kitchen, raising his finger to his lips. My mom's asleep, so be quiet. Okay. The three of us followed in quietly. Where's the guest bedroom? Casey muttered. I just want to go to sleep. Up there, at the end of the hall. Without another word, she disappeared up the stairs. The door slammed loudly a few seconds later, and Brady winced. She'll get over it, he whispered to me. No, she won't. But it's okay. I was gonna break up with her anyway. Really? I shook my head. It wasn't working. So what do we do now? Maribel asked, her first words since the photo. She hadn't said a word during Casey and my fight in the car. Get some sleep, I guess. It's almost 3 a.m., I replied. Maribel glanced at me, but then immediately broke eye contact and looked down at the floor. Did Casey ever say where she got the camera? Brady asked. I shook my head. Just said a friend gave it to her. Whoever they are, they probably know what's going on. Maybe they can help us, he replied, glancing at the stairs. I don't think you'll get any answers out of Casey tonight, Maribel muttered. Let's just go to sleep. I'm so tired. You want to take my room, Maribel? Or Benny and I can be in my room and you can be on the couch. I'll take the couch, she replied. Sure. The three of us moved into the family room. Brady bent down and grunting pulled out the couch. The rusty hinges creaked and groaned. Hang on, need to get you guys blankets and pillows, he said, brushing past us. His footsteps receded and then Maribel and I were alone. A few seconds ticked by. Our eyes didn't meet. Sorry, I finally said, breaking the silence. I know this is really stressful. The photo and everything. It doesn't mean anything. What? The photo. The future is totally undetermined. You and Casey changed the future by not going back to our house. The photo of us. It's only showing one possible timeline among infinite ones. She shook her head. It doesn't mean anything. Her words felt like a gut punch. Oh, okay. I sat down on the bed. When the silence got to be too much to handle, I got up again and began pacing the room. I thought I saw Maribel open her mouth at one point to say something out of the corner of my eye, but then she closed it again. The old wooden floor creaking under my feet was deafening. Guys, Brady's voice, coming from the kitchen, sounding terrified. Maribel and I ran over. We found him hunched over the kitchen counter, his back turned to us. My stomach plummeted like a rock. My photo changed, he whispered. He stepped away from the counter. No. Brady's photo was the photo we'd taken earlier. Him standing next to the tree, lit by the orange flames of the fire pit. He's going to die soon. My heart began to pound. I felt weak. Maribel leaned over the counter, staring at the photo, but I backed away. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my own photo, holding it up to my face. No, it had changed too. It was also me standing next to the tree. Maribel's mouth dropped open. No. She scrambled back into the family room. I heard the loud zip of her purse, and then she ran out of the darkness, breathless. Mine changed too. So we all die together, I asked, my voice shaking. Maybe he comes here, Maribel said. Maybe Casey's neighbor followed us here and is gonna murder us all. Brady, did you lock everything? I think so, he replied, his voice weak. Check the back door, she said, as she raced to the front. I ran over to the sliding glass door and tugged on it, locked. Brady ran into the garage, checking the big door, then ran back in and locked the door into the garage. Back door's locked. The garage is too, Brady replied. Maribel rushed back, nearly out of breath. The front door wasn't locked. He could be in here already. There's no way. We just got here, I said. But the photos didn't change. Look, Maribel held up her photo, now crumpled at the corners. We're still going to die. Okay, calm down, Brady said. We'll do a sweep of the house. Okay. We methodically walked through the house, opening closets and cabinets, peering inside. No one was there, but we did find one of the windows in the living room open, the curtains billowing in the wind. Brady slammed it shut. When we got upstairs, Brady took a quick peek in his mom's room. She was fast asleep. He tiptoed in and checked her closet. Empty. The guest bedroom, however, was locked. Casey, I called through the door. Nothing. Maybe she's already sleeping, Brady said. Or maybe she's already dead, Maribel whispered. Guys? I'm sure she's fine, Brady said. He started down the stairs. I need to go set the burglar alarm. A few seconds later, the beeping of the keypad came from downstairs. I think we should check on her, I whispered. Maribel nodded. Me too. Should we just break the door down or something? Hang on, Maribel reached up into her curly dark hair. After a few seconds, she slid a metal bobby pin out. Then she knelt on the ground and slid it into the hole in the doorknob. Clicking sounds came through the hallway as she tried to unlock it. What the fuck are you doing? Casey's voice came through the door, aggravated and harsh. Sorry, we just wanted to. I don't want to talk to anyone. I heard a screech of aggravation, and then a dragging sound followed by a thump at the door. It sounded like she was wedging something against the door. Casey, our photos changed, I called through the door. They're all us by the fire pit. Did yours change too? Go away. I fucking hate all of you, she screamed. Maribel and I exchanged a look. Then we headed back downstairs to find Brady pacing back and forth in the kitchen. They didn't change, he told us. We're locked in. The burglar alarm is on. Unless Casey's neighbor breaks through a window and shoots us all in like 3 minutes flat, it doesn't make sense. My guess is it's a fire or a gas leak. Or Casey. We turned to Maribel. She sounds completely unhinged in there. What if she comes out and kills us? There's no way she could. Brady started. Her dad has guns, I interjected. She could sneak out while we're sleeping, get a gun, come back and shoot us. Do you really think she's capable of that? Brady whispered. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know her that well. I always felt like I was talking to a mask. All her photos are so posed, and she's always keeping up this cheerleader cool girl persona that feels so fake. How she was acting tonight. I've never seen her act like that. So what do we do? Maribel asked. I don't know. I guess we leave and see if the photos change, I replied. What if it isn't her? We can't just leave her here. And we can't just leave my mom here, either, Brady said. What if it's a fire or something? What if one of us goes and checks if their picture changes, and the others stay here and make sure the house doesn't burn down? I guess that makes sense, Brady said, hesitating. So which one of us goes? I asked. A few seconds of silence passed between us. I guess I will, Brady finally said. Your pictures might not change either way if one of you is Casey's target. I'm the only one that would just be collateral damage. Besides, I don't really trust you guys driving my car, he said with a small smile. Okay, sure. Wait, but you have to plan not to come back, Maribel interjected. If you're just going for a drive, the photo or camera or whatever might know that. She pulled out her phone and began frantically tapping at the screen. What are you doing? Brady asked. Calling the Motel 6. A pause. Hi, I'd like to make a reservation for tonight, please. Just one. I'm not gonna pay for a motel. You got a better idea? No, sorry, I wasn't talking to you. Yeah, I do. My uncle lives in Belleville. He'll put me up for the night. Maribel glanced at him. Okay, sorry, cancel the reservation. We found something else. A few minutes later, Brady headed out. I'll call you when I get there, he said, and tell you what the photo is. We listened to the rumble of his engine, and after he'd pulled out, we closed and locked the garage door. I pulled out my phone, flipping it over nervously in my hands. We're going to be fine, I said to Maribel when I caught her looking at me. She laughed. Oh, really? Yeah. She glanced down at my hands, flipping the phone over and over. I think you need more convincing than me. We sat down at the kitchen table. Maribel opened a drawer and, after rummaging around, pulled out a huge chef's knife. If Casey really does go crazy on us, she said, smirking at my shocked expression. Do you think she'd try to kill us? I asked. I don't know. She's your girlfriend. Yeah, but she's still your friend. Do you think she'd do something like that? I whispered. Her smile faded. I don't know. Casey has always been emotionally volatile, I guess is the word. Like, one time we were swapping dresses, and I tried on this one dress that, I don't know, was very special to her for some reason, I guess. And she flipped out at me, like screaming at me, calling me a bitch, the works. I'd be furious at her, except she went completely back to normal as soon as I gave it back. I'd never really seen that side of her. Yeah, I think she probably hides the crazy from all her boyfriends. The conversation fizzled out, and we sat there in awkward silence, listening to the ticking of the annoying bird clock Brady's mother had hung up. Maribel looked down at the knife, her reflection in it. I picked at my cuticles. And then, suddenly my phone rang. I jumped and flipped it over. It's Brady. I picked it up. Hello. But from the instant I heard his voice, I knew something was terribly wrong. The photo had changed, but it's us not. Oh God, I think I'm going to die. Slow down. I can barely understand you, I said, anxiety flooding through me at the same time. Maribel asked, what's he saying? I grabbed the photo and switched it to speaker. What did the photo change to? I had to get on the highway to get to Belleville. And there's that toll, right? Well, my picture changed to the security camera picture from me driving through the toll. What? The picture is me driving through the toll 10 minutes ago. Oh no. There's another toll coming up in 5 miles. That means I die before I get to there. Can you turn around? Maribel asked. No, there's this huge median. Pull over, she shouted. Do something, anything that you weren't planning to do. Pull over and get out of the car and start running. But Maribel was interrupted. Wait, what the fuck is that? Brady asked, his voice weak, confused. But before he could explain, it happened. Crack. An ear-splitting crash came through the speakers, and then the call dropped. Maribel and I sat there in stunned silence, staring at the phone. Tears burned my eyes. My arms were frozen, my entire body stuck to the chair, staring at the black screen. We didn't want to say it, but we both knew. Brady was gone. Maribel collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I called 911. The details spilling out of me in incoherent fragments of sentences. He got into an accident. Brady Esposito, on the highway, near the toll near Belleville. Then I sat next to Maribel, wrapping my arms around her, starting to cry too. The tinny voice on the other end of the line asks her, "Are you still there? Stay with me on the line, please." But I couldn't pick it up, couldn't do anything but hold Maribel and cry. This can't be real. It's just a stupid photo. Maybe he didn't die. Maybe he's okay. But I knew, deep down I knew he was dead. That was the deal from the start. The camera was going to kill us one way or another. It had never been said, but it was obvious, wasn't it? The camera didn't just tell us our fates, it made them. And Casey had willingly brought it to us, taken pictures of all of us. Did she know this would happen? I ran up the stairs. "Brady's gone," I screamed, banging my fist on the door. "So you better tell us where you got this camera." A light pattering of footsteps sounded behind me as Maribel joined me. She grabbed me by the shoulders and nudged me away from the door. Hey. The photos haven't changed," she whispered, shoving them in my face. "Casey might still come out of there and murder us all. You think she would really?" "I don't know, but the photos didn't change." I backed away from the door. Slowly, we walked to the stairs. I looked back over my shoulder, but the door didn't open. Maybe Casey had already fallen asleep, or maybe she'd snuck out and gone back to her dad's house to get a gun. Emotionally volatile. That's what Maribel had said, and she was so angry at us. If she could get her hands on a gun. "What do we do now?" I whispered as we got back downstairs. "If we try to leave, we'll die on the road," Maribel replied, her voice wavering. "But if we stay here," she glanced down at the photos in her hand. The photos of us by the tree, lit by the bonfire. The last photos of us alive. "Wait," I said. "What if we destroy the photos?" It hadn't occurred to me before, but now, in fight or flight, in the darkness, death staring us in the face, it seemed obvious. Destroying the camera would be better, except we didn't have that. The CVS had disposed of it, or whatever, when they developed the photos. Maribel looked at me. That could work. Maybe. I don't know. I ran into the kitchen, yanking on the drawers, searching. Finally, I found a little book of matches. I ripped one off, and on the third strike, the flame sizzled to life, illuminating the kitchen in relief, flickering orange tones. I grabbed Maribel's photo first, touched the flame to the photo. For a few seconds, it didn't take. The glossy photo paper seemed to repel it, almost. "Come on," I muttered, holding both the match and the photo as still as I could in my shaking hands. The flame finally caught. The corner of the photo began to curl up, the base of the tree distorting as if it were melting. My heart pounded faster, something like hope bloomed in my chest. And then Maribel screamed. She fell to the ground and began thrashing on the floor, screaming, shrieking, in pain. "Maribel," what I started, but then I stared at the photo, the flame distorting the lines of color, turning it to ash. I raced to the sink. It extinguished with a hiss, and immediately her screams quieted. I dropped to the floor next to her. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked up at me. It hurt, so much she choked out, blinking away more tears. Thumps sounded on the stairs. First, Casey burst into the kitchen, her hair wild, her eyes wide, then Brady's mom behind her. "What's going on?" Mrs. Esposito asked, rushing over to us. "Is everyone okay?" My heart sunk. Brady was in an accident. I don't think he made it. 2. The photos changed again. As we sped down the highway, in the backseat of Mrs. Esposito's car, they changed. I'd been staring at my photo the entire ride, expecting it to change to exact footage of us on the highway at any second. The inside of the car was dark, but I could see it every time we passed underneath a street lamp, lit in the orange halogen glow, on, then off, like a monster lit by a strobe light in a haunted house. As we passed over the next street lamp, it was no longer the photo of me against the tree. It was instead a photo of me, Casey, and Maribel, dressed in black, standing outside a church, next to Brady's parents, his funeral. I knew he was dead, but seeing the photo made it real. I nudged Casey and Maribel. "Look," I whispered. Their photos were the same. Why did they change now? Right now on the way to Brady? Had Casey actually been planning to kill us, but now couldn't? "Where did you get the camera?" I whispered to Casey. She looked back at me in the dark with wide blue eyes. "Casey, I didn't know it was going to kill anyone." "Okay," she whispered, the corners of her mouth twitching. "Yeah, we know," Casey Maribel whispered, "but where did you get it?" She glanced between us fearfully. "Ezra Schmidt gave it to me." "Who?" Maribel asked. "Emma's brother. You know, the girl who was hospitalized last year for a suicide attempt." She took in a shaky breath. "You mean the girl you bullied all through middle school?" Maribel snapped, glaring darkly at Casey. "The girl you called Prego Emma?" Casey nodded sheepishly. "I ran into Ezra at the grocery store right before the party. He gave me the camera. Said it was a really cool camera one of his friends had found." "So you took a camera from the brother of the girl?" "He drove to suicide," Maribel said very slowly. "I didn't drive her to suicide. I haven't even talked to Emma since 8th grade. Those kinds of wounds don't really heal," Casey Maribel replied. "Like, ever. But Ezra was always nice to me. I think he even had a crush on me. He'd follow me around sometimes at school." "Okay. None of this matters," I whispered, cutting her off. "We need to find Ezra and ask him what's going on here, and how to stop it. It won't bring Brady back." A heavy silence fell over us. I glanced at the windshield, the dark highway stretching out in front of us, the back of Mrs. Esposito's head as she quietly sobbed. The minutes stretched on, the three of us in uneasy silence, and then, finally, we saw red and blue lights puncturing the darkness, police cars parked in the middle of the highway, obscuring the battered remains of a car. Mrs. Esposito parked on the shoulder and, without a word to us, ran towards the police officers. The three of us slowly approached after her, my heart hammering in my chest. Between the police cars, I could see slivers of Brady's car, twisted gray metal, shattered headlights. A white airbag pressed against a cracked windshield. I didn't need to fight through the cluster of cars to see how bad it was. And as we approached, I noticed something on the ground. Something small and white, face down among a few stray shards of glass and twisted metal. I walked towards it, the voices and sirens fading out of my consciousness. All I could do was stare at the photo, face down on the asphalt. I reached down and picked it up. My heart plummeted. It wasn't the final photo of Brady going through the toll booth. Instead, it was all blurry, muddy streaks of gray bleeding into each other, like the photo had been corrupted, or like the camera had been moving wildly. But there was something I could see. 2 lights in the upper right corner. Thin, jagged lines of light descended from them, as if they were also affected by the blur. Headlights. Is this what Brady saw right before he died? I stared at the 2 dots. There was something about them that unsettled me. I couldn't look away. 2 lights, almost like eyes, staring back up at me through the glossy photo paper. He can't avoid us forever. We were parked outside of Ezra Schmidt's house. Casey stared up at the darkened frame, arms crossed over her chest. "He can't," she repeated, shaking her head, as if that could will him into existence. "Maybe he skipped town," Maribel said from the back seat. "He wouldn't do that," Casey replied. "Why not? He gave you a camera he knew would kill you. He doesn't want to be implicated for murder, does he?" Casey huffed. "No one would believe him." "Okay, look, let's just try again later," I cut in, starting the car. "Until then." I think our next best option is to get the camera back. Maybe if we destroy it, it'll break this whole thing. Or maybe it'll kill us faster, like destroying the photo, Maribel replied. They probably already threw it away, Casey added. Do you have a better idea? Both of them shook their heads. The drive back to CVS was completely silent. The three of us walked into the store, Brady's absence weighing down on us. A quick glance around, but photo guy wasn't there. There was just an older woman standing at the counter. We were here on Friday, Maribel started, with a disposable camera. Do you by any chance still have it? A disposable camera? I nodded. I haven't seen one of those things in years, she said, shaking her head. I don't know. We used to recycle them, I think. Cycle them, Maribel glanced at me. Yeah, I don't even think they melt him down. The plastic body is just like refilled with new film and sold again. It's how Kodak turned such a big profit on those things. I mean, a whole camera for $10. Who could beat that, right? I mean, is there any chance you still have it somewhere? I interrupted. Maybe. I think we only do the whole recycling thing on Mondays. And those guys that come take the hazardous stuff, like with lithium batteries and whatnot, every other Wednesday. She continued muttering to herself as she crouched down, scanning the other side of the counter. What day did you say you came here? Again. Friday, I replied. Ah, you're in luck, I think. Is this it? She pulled out the camera. The three of us stared down at it. The camera stared back at us, lens glistening in the light. My stomach turned. Are you gonna take it or not? Sorry. I grabbed the camera, and the three of us hurried out of the store. Kids these days don't even say thank you, the woman muttered behind us. As I drove us back to my house, my spirits rose. We had the camera. Maybe bashing it to smithereens or throwing it in the fire would be all that it took. Destroy the cursed object, break the curse. It could be that simple. We could be free. Or maybe it would kill us all. Somehow, both those options sounded better than waiting for our inevitable deaths over the next few days. As soon as we got back, I grabbed the camera and made a beeline for the shed. My dad had everything in there: hammers, mallets, a circular saw, everything we could possibly need to destroy this thing. Casey and Maribel followed after me. I grabbed a hammer, hefting it in my hands. I think we should destroy it. That's my vote. Maribel and Casey glanced at each other. When you burned the photo, it was burning me, Maribel said, starting to pace. This thing, the photos, at least, almost act like some sort of voodoo doll. If you destroy it, how do you know it won't kill us all instantly? I don't. But saving us or dying instantly both sound better than waiting around to die. I turned to Casey. What about you? She chewed on one of her Malibu pink fingernails. Aha, I don't know. I guess we gotta try destroying it. We're all gonna die anyway, right? 2-1, I told Maribel. Sorry. She crossed her arms. I grabbed 3 pairs of safety glasses off the wall and handed them out. Casey raised an eyebrow at me. Safety glasses? Really? If we survive this thing, do you want to be blind? No, but they look so stupid. She put them on, grimacing. Yuck. Maribel rolled her eyes, then replaced her own glasses with the safety ones. She gave me a hesitant thumbs up. I positioned the camera in the center of the worktable. Then I raised the hammer. In the lens, I could see my tiny reflection, distorted by the spherical lens, like a fishy view. Eyes wide, the hammer raised high above my head. I took a deep breath, and then I brought the hammer down. Thump. A direct hit. And yet the camera didn't have the slightest dent in it. Should I raise the hammer again? Thump, and again. Thump. It was like the thing was made of steel. I went wild. I brought the hammer down again and again, arms flailing wildly. Maribel was saying something behind me, but I couldn't hear her over the blood rushing in my ears, the thumps of the hammer against the camera. Benny, Casey shrieked. And then I saw it. A thick, dark liquid oozing out of the camera, seeping into the grooves of the wood, dripping off the edge of the table and onto the floor. My stomach turned. I flipped the camera over. The wet, sticky substance that looked so much like blood coated my fingertips, oozing from a seam on the side where the front and back panels connected. I raised the hammer and smashed at the back of it, then the front. I smashed it until I was exhausted and my arms were sore and I couldn't lift the hammer again. The camera was still in perfect condition. "Let's go back to Ezra," Maribel said. "Maybe he's home now." I glanced back at the camera. "Let me try one more thing." I reached down and grabbed the extension cord, plugged it in, flipped a switch, and the circular saw whirred to life. Casey and Maribel looked at me with wide eyes. I grabbed the camera, fingers safely on either side, and pushed it towards the blade. The screeching of the saw filled my ears, echoing in the small shed. "Benny, you're not really." "We have to get rid of this thing," I shouted over the noise. "Benny, I can't keep waiting for us to die." I pushed the camera straight into the whirring, spinning blades. But when the plastic met the metal, it ratcheted and caught, a horrible grinding sound. "What the?" I pushed against the camera harder. And then my hand slipped. It happened so fast. 1 second hands on the camera, pushing the next, the camera on the floor, and blood pain so much gushing onto the floor. Maribel and Casey screaming in my ears. The blade screeching, spinning red and silver. Darkness pulsing through my vision. Nothing. I woke up in the emergency room with several stitches on my right ring finger. I'd apparently sliced the tip of my finger and then fainted. So much blood for such a small wound. I pictured my own blood, mixing and swirling with the dark, sticky ooze from the camera on the dusty floor of the shed. "Why didn't it kill me?" I asked. "I don't know," Casey replied. "It would have been easy for that saw to kill me, but it didn't." "I think it's working in order," Maribel said. I turned to her. She looked terrible, her normally brown skin ashen, deep circles under her eyes. "It's working in order. Brady was the first one photographed, right? And then the first one to die. You didn't die because you're not the next one in line." She sucked in a breath. "I am." I stared at her, my stomach twisting. Psh. We drove back to Ezra's house. It was still empty, so it was stakeout time. Maribel napped in the back seat while we picked up Thai food and then settled in front of Ezra's house, eating for what felt like the first time in days. As it turned out, we didn't have to wait long. Only an hour later, a beat-up green sedan pulled into the driveway. He was home. Casey woke Maribel while I wiped my hands and bagged up the trash. "Ew, what's that smell?" Maribel asked, waving her hand. "We got Thai while you were sleeping," I replied. She scowled at us. "Anyway, Ezra's home. Any ideas how to handle him?" I asked. "Well, I think Casey should wait in the car," she replied. "If he sees her, he's going to know why we're here." "Good idea." "And I think I have an idea of what to say," she said, swinging her door open. "Follow my lead." Maribel and I walked up the steps. The house was in complete disrepair. Cracks lined the walkway, and an old wind chime fluttered in the breeze, softly tinkling. However, they weren't lax about security. A sleek Ring camera had been installed, staring blankly up at us. Maribel raised her hand to knock. Muffled footsteps came from inside, and then the door creaked open. A disheveled, short guy with messy dark hair peered up at us. "Can I help you?" Ezra was only a few years older than us, but he looked like he was a decade older, from the deep circles under his eyes and the stubble on his jaw. "Yeah," Maribel replied. "I'm Maribel and he's Benny. We're seniors at Lakewood High School. Can we come in for a second?" His eyes darted between us, and then a flicker of recognition as he stared at Maribel. "I've seen you before. You're in marching band, right?" She nodded, smiling. "Can we come in?" His eyes narrowed. "Why, you guys Jehovah's Witnesses now or something?" "We're interviewing alumni," Maribel cut in, her voice filled with fake confidence. I never knew Maribel had any acting skills, but I guess survival instincts had taken over, because she was completely convincing. "We're doing this whole project where the seniors are interviewing alumni to get an idea of what the real life looks like after high school. It's like of a whole thing." A pause, and then Ezra stepped aside. "Okay, what the hell, come on in. I got a few minutes." We stepped past him into a small, messy living room. Piles of mail, stacks of boxes, dirty dishes on the coffee table. The door clicked shut, Sorry about the mess Ezra started. I was just... What's the story with the camera you gave Casey? Maribel asked. Ezra paled. And then he ran for the door. Time stood still. I stood frozen in shock, one part of my brain screaming to move and tackle him, the other part terrified. Thankfully, Maribel was faster. She immediately leapt at him and tackled him to the floor. Don't just stand there. I ran over and grabbed shoulders, keeping him pinned to the ground. Brady is dead because of you, Maribel growled in his face. His eyes went wide. Who? The camera killed him, and now it's going to kill all of us. I shouted. No, I don't want you guys to die. I didn't want anyone to die except her. He pointed a shaking finger behind us. I turned around to see Casey standing there in the open doorway, arms crossed. Thanks a lot, she muttered. Do you know what Emma has gone through because of you? He shouted. He tried to get up. I struggled to keep him down. She had to drop out of college. She can't even play soccer anymore. Her coordination's all fucked up. She will never be the same. But you don't even care, do you? She was just another person you could tear down and fuck up, because that's the only thing you can do. It was middle school, okay? Everyone's mean in middle school, Casey shouted back. Emma wasn't, he growled. And neither was Brady or Benny or me. So why do we have to die? Huh, Maribel asked, leaning in so close I could see her spit flying onto his face. Ezra looked back at us, the anger fading from his face. I'm sorry, I really am. I thought she would just use the camera for selfies, like the vain bitch she is, he suddenly shouted, looking back at her, and then she would die. I never thought she would bring anyone else into it. Yeah, but you had to realize she'd probably take other pictures. She's not going to take 20 selfies in a row, I said. He narrowed his eyes at me. There was only one photo left on the camera. Maribel glanced at me. It took a photo of each of us. All four of us. There was more than one photo. His face dropped. Tell us how to stop it. We promise we won't turn you into the police or anything. They wouldn't believe us anyway. Maribel's voice began to shake. Tell us, please. But Casey still needs to die. But Maribel and I don't, I shouted. So tell us how to stop it. He shook his head. Look, I am sorry for what I did. Okay, Casey said, stepping towards us. I was really insecure back then. And I wasn't just mean to Emma. I was mean to everyone, except Avery and Maya. It wasn't like I was singling out your sister. I'm sorry. I am. You wouldn't be apologizing if your life didn't depend on it, Ezra spat. Maribel's going to die next, Ezra. Are you really going to let her die? Or are you going to tell us how to stop it? I asked. Ezra glanced at me, then sighed. I don't know, okay? I got it online. Someone posted it on this online forum for supernatural stuff. I didn't even believe it at first myself. But then I took some pictures of Anne's bugs, and they curled up and died. But I don't know how to stop it. I don't. You're lying, I snapped. I'm not. I swear I'm not. I think we need more than that, Casey said behind us. In a dark, gravelly voice I barely recognized as her own. I turned around to see her reaching into her bag and pulling out something shiny and black, the ratcheting sound of plastic gears fighting against each other. Oh no, oh no. Oh. Casey. Click. Ezra froze. No, he said weakly. No, you didn't. Casey took a step back, her face stone cold. Now you're in this too. So let me ask you again. How do we stop this thing? Ezra paused, and for a horrifying moment, I thought she'd just killed an innocent man. But then he spoke. Take a photo of the camera itself, he replied. Set it up in front of a mirror. Make sure you're not in the photo. The camera will self-destruct, kill itself, if it's the only living thing in the photo. The camera is alive, Maribel asked weakly. The dark blood spilling out onto the worktable flashed through my mind. Ezra nodded, but he told me there will be consequences. For whoever destroys the camera, the curse itself will be gone, but there will be other things. What other things, I asked. I don't know. He didn't tell me. His eyes fell on Casey. I swear this time he didn't tell me. We dragged a stool into the bathroom upstairs. That's where the camera would sit, facing the mirror. The only problem now was pressing the button. There was no timer on the camera, so if we couldn't be in the picture, we had to do it with something non-living. A stick, maybe. Something. Anything. I was tearing through my closet when Maribel interrupted me. "Benny." I turned around. Maribel was standing in the doorway, holding up her photo. I stepped closer. It had changed. It was now a grainy black and white photo, her standing on a porch with her arms crossed, face slightly distorted by a fishy lens. It was the photo from Ezra's Ring camera, taken less than an hour ago. No, no, no. We were running out of time. She could die any minute, any second. "We need to get you somewhere safe," I said, grabbing her arm and pulling her out into the hallway. Brandon's room. My older brother's room had been cleared out for a year now. He was living in California for 5 years now with his boyfriend, and my parents were all too happy to remove every trace of him from the house. Only a dusty dresser sat in the corner, which could kill her if it fell on her. I pulled her towards the closet. It was completely empty, except for some wire shelves that were too light to cause any damage. "Stay here until we get the picture," I said. "I'm kinda claustrophobic. It'll only be like 10 minutes. You'll be safe." I started for the door. "Benny, wait." I turned around. Maribel stood there, eyes red, tears rolling down her cheeks. She reached out and grabbed my hand. And then, without a word, she wrapped her arms around me in a hug, pulled back, and reached up and kissed me. For that single instant, it was just the two of us. No death, no camera, nothing. The entire universe could be crumbling, and it wouldn't matter. Just us, two flickers of existence in the vastness of time and space, communing for a single moment. "Benny." I looked up to see Casey in the doorway. "What the fuck are you doing?" I stepped back. Maribel, blushing, backed into the closet. "I'll be right back." "Okay," I whispered to her, before the door snicked shut. It took a few minutes, but I was able to eventually bend a wire coat hanger from my closet into something that would press the button. Casey watched as I stood in the bathroom doorway, slowly lowering the bit of steel onto the button. "Shit," I muttered as I missed it once, twice, 3 times. But then, on the 4th time, I made it. Click, followed by a deafening crack. The mirror had cracked, in circular rings like someone had punched it or hit it with a crowbar, exactly where the camera was aimed. But it didn't matter. We did it. I ran into Brandon's room. "We did it," I shouted, throwing the closet door open. "We." My voice died in my throat. Maribel was on the floor, gasping for breath, face red, lips swollen and mottled. And then it all hit me like a truck. She'd kissed me. I'd eaten Thai peanut noodles. And Maribel was deathly allergic to peanuts. "EpiPen. We need her EpiPen," I shouted, running downstairs. Casey followed at my heels. "Does she have one in her purse?" "I don't know." When seconds of scanning turned up nothing, I raced out to the car. There her purse was, in the back seat. I yanked the door open and clawed through it. There it was, the gray and orange injector, under layers of tissues and dust. I grabbed it and bolted up the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd have a heart attack. Maribel was motionless on the floor. "How do you?" I started. "Give it to me," she shouted, yanking it out of my hands. Shaking her head, she pulled off the safety cap and swung it hard into Maribel's outer thigh. 1, 2, 3. "Are you sure you're doing it right?" "My brother has one." I pulled out my phone and called 911. Maribel remained motionless on the floor. I ran over to her, pressing my fingers to her neck for a pulse. It sounded weak. I backed up, breathing hard, black dots dancing in my vision. And then I saw it. Maribel's photo, lying on the floor of the closet. No. It hadn't changed. Even though we destroyed the camera, it hadn't changed. It still showed her on Ezra's porch. "It didn't change," I said, shoving the photo in Casey's face. Maybe the photos, maybe they stay like that. After the camera's broken, Casey replied. She didn't sound convinced. It doesn't mean she's going to die. Or maybe we were too late. We destroyed it. After the allergic reaction started. Casey didn't reply. Sirens pierced the air, and then chaos EMTs charging up the stairs, bursting into the bedroom. I watched as they worked on Maribel, checking her pulse, propping her up off the floor, and then the words I'd been waiting to hear. She's breathing. They loaded her onto a stretcher and carried her down the stairs, then out the door. Wait, is she going to be okay? I asked, running out after them. Honestly, I don't know. We have to get her to the hospital, the EMT told me. I followed him towards the ambulance, but he held a hand up. Are you family? He asked. No. Sorry, kid. He jumped in the back and closed the doors. And that was it. Then the ambulance careened back into the street, lights flashing, siren wailing, and then silence. I stood there frozen. She's not going to make it. We were too late. Her last photograph may have been the one on Ezra's porch, but the image that would be burned into my brain forever was this one, her lying in the back of the ambulance, eyes closed, head twisted to the side, patchy red blotches all over her face and neck. Everyone dies at some point, even the person you're in love with. And with that reality comes some cold, hard facts. You will have a last kiss, a last hug, a last phone call, and a last time you ever see that person alive. I don't know how long I stood there in the driveway, staring at the curve in the road where the ambulance had disappeared. But then, suddenly, Casey was tugging me back. Come on, she said. We need to make sure the camera was destroyed. If it was, maybe the curse is broken. I followed her back into the house, my stomach twisting as we climbed the stairs. We made our way down the dark hallway to the second floor bathroom. Light spilled out from the skylight, but I still couldn't see the camera, just the shattered mirror. I forced myself to walk faster. And then I saw it. The camera was on the floor. It looked as if it had been exploded from the inside. Underneath its remains, seeping into the tile floor, was a pool of dark, thick liquid that resembled blood. The same stuff that had come out of the camera in the shed when I'd first tried to destroy it. My stomach turned. It seemed too easy. Just take the photo of itself and that's it. Besides, Ezra said there would be consequences, right? For the person who made the camera self-destruct. We should check our photos just to be really sure, Casey said, heading back downstairs. Mine's in my purse. I listened to her go. Then I went into my bedroom. I'd left the photo tucked between a few books in my bookshelf. Between Fermat's Enigma and Mr. Tompkins in paperback, I eased out the photograph. It was creased slightly, now dented and warped. I flipped it over. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a blank page, maybe complete darkness, a photo of nothing. Maybe the same image as before. Or maybe a glitchy photo of melting, warped colors, like the photo guy at CVS had described. Either way, I hadn't expected this. The photo had changed. It showed me standing on the Ezra's porch. It matched Maribel's. I swallowed, my throat dry. If the camera was killing us, in order. And my last photo was now the porch photo. That proved that Maribel was going to die at any second, and then the camera was going to move on to me immediately. There were security cameras in the hospital, for example, so I wouldn't live long enough to visit her there. Cameras at a funeral too. Security cameras at tolls, at stoplights, at stores. You can't go very long without being surveilled. She was going to die any minute. And I'd be right after her. The photo shook in my hands as my fingers trembled. The creak of a floorboard sounded behind me. I turned around to say Casey standing in the doorway. Hey, I said, not knowing what else to say. I held up the photo. It changed, I'm next. Mine changed too, she replied, in a small voice. What too? She didn't reply. She just stood in the doorway, unmoving, her lower lip trembling. Casey, it works in order, right? And I'm last because I was photographed last, she asked. But her voice was different, an edge to it, an undercurrent of panic. of fear of something. "Yeah," I replied. "But Maribel's probably still alive. She only left in the ambulance a few minutes ago." She took another step into the room, standing unnaturally straight, eye contact unwavering. "If we change the order, if someone else died before Maribel, we'd break the curse." My heart sank as the pieces slowly fit together in my mind. "What exactly are you getting at?" "I'm sorry," she replied. And then she lunged at me. Metal glinted, she was holding my mom's chef knife in the air, bringing it down towards me. "Casey," I screamed. I grabbed her wrist and locked my arm, using all my strength to keep her back. God, she was strong for a 120-pound cheerleader. The silver blade shivered in the air. "What are you?" "If you die before Maribel, it'll screw up the order. The camera will be proven wrong," she said through gritted teeth. "And then I won't die." "You don't even know if that's true." "I'm willing to try." With a gasp, she yanked her hand back. The action surprised me so much she was able to pull out of my grip, then darted towards me again, slashing the knife through the air. It made a horrible whoosh sound next to my ear. I grabbed her arms again, and we twisted and struggled, wobbling back and forth in the small room. A crash as my elbow knocked over a turtle sculpture I'd made in 8th grade. A snap of pain as my hip hit the corner of my desk. The floor shook. I got my hand on the knife and pulled as hard as I could. I got it. The knife was in my hands now. I backed away, panting, and held it up in a defensive stance. "I swear, Casey, if you come any closer." She looked at me, her blue eyes wild, and then, screaming, catapulted towards me. I fell to the ground. In a flash, her hands wrapped around my neck and squeezed. I grabbed the knife. Metal hit flesh. I scrambled out from underneath her. Casey rolled off of me, falling to the ground, blooming red stain in the middle of her pink t-shirt. Her eyes roved over the room, staring up at the ceiling, as she fought for the last gasps of her life. "I'm so sorry," I said, scrambling up and backing away. "Casey." Aye. For a second, her blue eyes flicked to mine. "Fuck you, Benny," she whispered. And then her eyes went blank. And I sped to the hospital, trees and grass whipping by me in a blur. My photo sat in the passenger seat, but now it was perfectly blank, white as a clean sheet of paper. I ran through the hospital hallways, my heart pounding, hoping I wasn't too late. And then I found her. Maribel lay in a hospital bed, her normally light brown skin tinged ashy gray. Her parents sat next to her, stone-faced, holding her hand. "Is she?" Her mother glanced up at me. "The doctor says she'll be okay," she said, her voice hoarse. But it was a close call. A very close call. I approached her. Her face looked so peaceful, eyes closed, dark curls splayed out over the pillow. I reached for her hand, then thought better of it. Who knew what microscopic particles were still on my hands, jump-starting the reaction again. Instead, I kept my distance, just watching her, letting this image overwrite the one of her in the ambulance, motionless on a stretcher, as paramedics frantically worked around her. Was Casey right? Changing the order, proving the camera wrong. Was that all it took to break free? I left after a few minutes from Maribel's parents' stairs. I don't think I was particularly welcome there. I walked out of the hospital, my heart soaring. A faint drizzle of rain began to fall, dark clouds gathering overhead. I got in the car, slammed the door, and picked up the photo for the last time. Just a piece of paper. I took a deep breath and ripped it straight in two. Then I started the car and pulled back onto the road. I knew I had a long way ahead of me. The police would be at my house by now, finding Casey's body. It would be hard to prove that I killed a woman a foot shorter than me in self-defense. But Maribel was alive, she would be okay. And somehow that was all that mattered. Maybe that's what Ezra was talking about when he said whoever destroyed the camera would face consequences. Maybe the layers of fate and destiny all pull towards you like a magnet, lining things up so that you won't ever be free. Not really. Just as the camera orchestrates the deaths of those it photographs, it also lines up a plot of revenge on the person who destroyed it. But it didn't matter. The curse was broken, and the camera wouldn't hurt anyone ever again. When I reached the highway, I pulled down the window and let the two pieces of photograph flutter away into the wind.